Hey everybody, Jackie Woodside here, founder of the Curriculum for Conscious Living and the Conscious Living Summit. Here we go again. Thank you so much for your energy and your enthusiasm and your connection to these just daily lessons that we're having. So many brilliant teachers raising our spirit, raising our consciousness, our awareness to what does it mean to be living a conscious life. So today I have a dear colleague of mine on the stage today. KineCorder is the world's #1 financial hypnotherapist. That's an extraordinary title for her, but she has created a company called Presidential Lifestyle, where she works primarily with male CEOs, helping them to claim the abundance and prosperity that they know is theirs by going on a deep journey in the presidential experience, helping them to align with the financial abundance that they know is theirs. She also, among other things, has been on the Oprah show, a dream for many of us teachers and speakers, one that Kine accomplished. It's just so extraordinary. And she also has a background as a clinical hypnotherapist working with teenage boys. And I know this because it's near and dear to my heart. I was so taken with Kine when she and I met by her love and wisdom and confidence and clarity about her work that I actually hired her to work with my teenage boy. And it's been a wonderful journey. So Kine, welcome to the Conscious Living Summit, and thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. And thank you for that lovely introduction and even the connection that we have outside of the colleague work that we do here. So yes, thank you for bringing me into your family.
That's awesome. No, it's nice. I appreciate the way we're managing a dual relationship where we have a professional relationship and then you're also an integral part of my family life as well. So thank you for that and the honor.
You're welcome. And what's so awesome about that is that just doesn't happen on a lot of times because people don't know how to manage on we're living consciously. So we do know how to manage that, but many people do not know how to manage that, which I think is a testimony to the work that we are doing. We really are doing our own work.
So beautiful. Yeah, right. Living consciously. You can manage a dual relationship where we have this role and we have this role and the two don't cross. The two don't need to cross.
And I so respect that about you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was a psychotherapist in the deaf community for many years. So the deaf community is very small. So I would often see people in my office as a psychotherapy patient, but then also see them at, the basketball game or the deaf theater event or the deaf person's wedding or the deaf person's funeral. So I managed dual relationships as a clinician for many, many years. And it became part of my teaching as a leader in the deaf community.
Oh, wow.
I managed dual relationships. Awesome. Yeah. So I do consider myself an expert at it. So thank you for participating and being so lovely with it. So for people, Kine, that maybe haven't come upon your work a little bit more, I'm just going to assume you didn't wake up yesterday being the world's #1 financial hypnotherapist. So tell people just a little bit about your path, your journey that led you here to this, to being really a world-renowned teacher about consciousness and conscious living. How'd you get here?
I got here, I've been doing this work since I was 15 years old. I got introduced to a church that was really about conscious living, and it's called the Universal Truth Foundation. That was the foundation of what they taught. They called it Universal Truth, and it was Christian based, but it wasn't Bible based. So the belief there was that every book that we read had some teaching, and learning that at 15 years old taught me the world in a different way. Aside from that, I was growing up in a family where my mom allowed me to be who I was. And what a lot of people don't realize or know about me because they can't see it on my face is that when I was a kid, I had a chance to be labeled and diagnosed, but the doctor that I was working with said, you know what? We're not going to diagnose this kid. We're just going to see, she's not talking because she doesn't have anything to say. Because to be 2.5 years old and not have spoken says maybe there's something wrong. At least that's what my parents thought. But then we went to see this doctor and the doctor says, she doesn't have anything to say. And when she's ready, she will talk. And sure enough, I mean, hey, I'm talking now, right?
Yeah, right. You talk for a living.
Exactly. So just like that, being able to be myself for those 2.5 years and not being forced to have to talk allowed me to live my life really consciously, because all that time I was just observing and observing and observing. And I came out with so much wisdom on the other side, which allowed for me when I was 15 years old to receive that universal truth and to then start to share it with others. So fast forward after 15, I was taught that you had to, work hard, and you had to get a job and go to school and get degrees, and all of the societal programming.
Or the default life.
I took it in, I received it, and kind of forgot some of the teachings that I learned. And then around about 15 years ago, I said, you know what? I know this stuff. This stuff is inside of me. Why am I living so poor is the word that I'm going to use. But when I say that, I don't mean that by dollars. I just mean that in my mentality. My mental was just so deprived. And so why am I working myself so hard? Why am I burnt out? Why am I questioning my power? Why am I not even living in my power? And so at the time I was working in finance, and I felt like I was doing a disservice. I felt like I was creating more problems than I was actually solving. And then I turned around and I set out to alleviate human suffering associated with money. Now, at the time, I had no idea what that meant when I wrote that sentence down, but I knew it meant that I was going to have to do something in finance, but I was also going to have to bring back my conscious living into my life. And so fast forward a couple more years, working as a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley, I'm still seeing that I'm not making a difference. Sure, I'm helping people retire and I'm creating portfolios, but it's like, but this isn't it. These people are still arguing, and there's still trauma and anxiety around money, and I'm not doing my work. And so I left Morgan Stanley and went back to school, got my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and that was 6 years ago. And since then, I started a practice. And in this practice, I started working with teenage boys, as you mentioned, and really helping them decide at around 15, 16 years old, what was their idea of prosperity? Because they had it, they knew it, but then, the world was telling them, because I remember when I was 15, I had it, I knew it. And then the world changed me one little bit at a time, one little program at a time. And so I started working with them, helping them adjust. But then parents started seeing that, and they're like, well, we need some help too. And then the business evolved and evolved and evolved. And eventually I saw that my calling was really to work with the CEO of the company, because culture doesn't trickle up, it trickles down. Yeah. So if the CEO has a money mentality that's about scarcity and fear, then that is going to trickle down through the company. And so from working with the CEO, then working with the upper management, then working with the employees, and then having an arm that allows that employee to offer what they learned at work to their family at home. And that was the only way that we were going to really alleviate human suffering associated with money.
Oh my gosh, what a powerful story. I love that. And I love what I love the way that kind of the universe guided you down to really get super clear and specific to alleviate human suffering around money. I wrote a book called Money Vibe, and it was very much the same thing, because human suffering around money or anything else for that matter, human suffering isn't about the external conditions. And I know that that's tough to say, particularly for me as an educated white person. That can sound very privileged, that can sound very classist, it can sound very racist. But I look to teachers like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and a lesser known woman who perished in the concentration camps, Etty Hillesum. She wrote the Diary of an Interrupted Life, and she wrote a lot of her diary from the concentration camps. And she's hailed as a modern day mystic. So it's not, and she was in the concentration camps writing about just God and the beauty of life, and wanting to look in her captor's eyes because she knows that she would see love in the soul. And I can't bring forth even an ounce of hatred into this world, because that brings more hatred into all of humanity. Wow. So it was extraordinary. I'll ping you her writings. They're really extraordinary, really impacted my life. And I love that she's a woman, but her writings really need to be brought forth. So I'm responsible that I'm an educated white person saying that life circumstances aren't about what's happening outside of you. Human suffering is about the inner condition, which leads us right into what my motivation was for this summit, Conscious Living Summit. You know, we're in a time when there seems to be this big conscious awakening where everybody's taking a, there's a yoga class on every corner and a meditation class at the YMCA. And, it's seemingly everywhere. Yet simultaneously, we're experiencing a decrease of the life expectancy, went down by 1.5 years, and I know that was partially the pandemic, but it went down the year before the pandemic as well, because so many men are dying with overdoses and drug addiction. So even before the pandemic, life expectancy decreased, the political divide, the environmental crisis. So while, we're supposed to be in this time where everybody's awakening, in some ways, it looks like the world's falling apart. So, right? So I'm curious, just to get us started, Kine, we'll start high level. How do you understand conscious living? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So I want to just take one step back and talk about the human suffering first, because that to me will bring us to the conscious living. We all suffer in our own way, no matter what suffering looks like. Even if I joke a lot, if my daughter breaks a nail, she is suffering.
Right?
And I
so
have
how we define suffering.
Exactly.
Right?
And I have to go there with her. Like, oh my gosh, it's going to be okay. I understand. Right. But if I just go, oh, it's just a nail. Right. She's like, but mom, you don't understand.
Yeah. That's her suffering right there. Right there.
Exactly. So I wanted to bring that up because I think that what happens in the way that I understand it, not that I'm saying, I don't know if reincarnation exists, but what I do know is that the soul has traveled. And if the soul has traveled and it decides that it's coming into a human form, when it comes into that human form, it already has an experience that it wants to experience. And it may say, today, this time, I want to be a Black woman. Let's see what that's about.
You're going to have that experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that might look like what I consider, for me, that might look like a little bit of a tougher life in America, right? Depending upon where I live, that means something else. So conscious living for me is like about being present, because this present moment, this me, Kine, in America as a Black woman is my consciousness. But it does not mean I have to take on what the world has told me that means. Because even though Jackie Woodside seems like she has more privilege than me, Kine, the Black woman, if I see it that way, then absolutely, that is my consciousness. Right. But if I say, Jackie has no idea what it means to be this privilege, right? Because I have let's just say the bold girl privilege.
I don't have that one.
There's a privilege that this is not a thing, right? I'm making this up as I go along, but there is a privilege that comes with not being meek, like that just comes with being bold. And I will say whatever. And you know why? Because the first words out of my mouth ever in life were, "You're bothering me." A complete sentence. So you remember, going back to the early story, I didn't say words for a really long time. But when I finally did say something, it was to my grandmother, who was blocking the television. And she was trying to talk to me, and I was trying to watch TV. And every time I moved, she moved. And I was just like, "You're bothering me." And she was like, "Oh."
She spoke. I can't believe that was your first sentence. Oh my gosh, that's a great story.
Yeah. So, but because that was the first words that came out of my mouth, I have the privilege of being myself. And not everybody has that privilege.
Nice.
And so to me, that really encompasses conscious living, when you can be yourself. But of course, first, you got to know what that is.
Right.
And we get a lot of stuff gets piled. I say for boys and men, a lot of things get piled on top, like what it means to be a man, what you got to do and who you got to do it for. All those things get piled on top. So who you really are is underneath that. And then you got to peel that off after some years. But for a woman, it gets chipped away at and chipped away at, chipped away at. Don't do this and don't do that. Don't have sex too early. You want to be ladylike. Don't do this, don't do that. All these things you have to do. Wear pink. Oh, you don't have on pink? I don't know that you're that much of a lady,
Mhm.
right? It's like, what? So the more you can be yourself, the more conscious living you can encompass or have in your life.
Being yourself. So, I mean, and you alluded to that, you know, I mean, it sounds so simple, right?
Yes.
It sounds so simple, but let's just deepen it a little bit because
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I had a coaching call this morning with a woman who's in her 50s, and she was really saying, I just don't know. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. And that was, a woman who's educated and raised her family. And so
Yep.
let's dive into that a little bit. I love this topic as well. And
Yeah.
I think it's part of
Because
being conscious because, right, so I'm just going to back up a little bit because there's only one energy and consciousness in the universe that God is and we are. And in my understanding is that we are little God seeds, God expressions, as of the energy of life itself. And if you don't know who you are, which in the information age is one hell of a task,
it is.
because there's so much coming at us. We should look like this, and we should feel like that, and we should, wear this product and use this, listen to this music. It's unbelievable. I can't imagine being a teenager growing up in this era of your identity constantly coming at you. So, and I know you have some good teaching around this. How do you, quote, know yourself so that you can live consciously?
Yes. So made the distinction for women and men. So for women, what you're then doing is if you're at like your client, if you're 50 years old and you're trying to figure this out, then really what you're doing is pulling those pieces that got chipped away at
Mhm.
back together. Where is that part of me? That me that could say you're bothering me, right? Where's that 2.5-year-old, that 7-year-old that, was able to pick flowers and it was okay? Like, where is she? And it's just pulling all those pieces back together. But it takes some remembrance, right?
Mhm.
You have to remember who you were for a woman. And then for a man, it's sort of peeling those layers off of stuff that people piled on top of you. So it's like, wait, do I want to have muscles? Okay, no, I don't care about muscles, right? Do do I need to? I would buy my mom a house. Do I want to buy my mom a house? Actually, my mom has a house. She loves the house she's in. I don't have to buy my mom a house, right? You take all of those things off, but what do I? So who's down there? Who's underneath there? So some of it is I call it reprogramming. So the chips that the women go through and the layers that the men have, that's your program. So you're clearing that program out so that you can hear yourself, because all of those chips, they kind of just muted your ears, almost like if you were listening to the radio and you know how you're in between stations and you can hear one station, you can kind of hear another station, and then that's what's happening. You really just got to tune in to yourself so that your voice becomes the prominent voice, not the social media voice, not the teachers in school voice, not even the parents' voice, but your voice. What is your voice saying? Because for parents, we have really about 0 to 12 years old at the most. We really only really have about 0 to 5 to
Mhm.
pour into our children what we would like them to learn from us. After that, they're doing it on their own. They're figuring it out. They're touching, they're feeling, they're making mistakes and changing. And then we just have to support them in that. But that's not what happens, because as parents, we're like, no, I love you so much that I'm going to guide you along the way as long as I possibly can. And I'm
Right,
not letting you
right,
go. Right.
right.
And so, and even though as parents we do that out of love, it's still sort of a disservice because the voice that we're listening to is another voice outside of us. So the more we can let go of those voices
Mhm.
and tune in to our own voice
Yeah.
and then trust that voice, because mommy's voice is strong and powerful and also very loving and gentle. So I rather trust mommy's voice than my own voice. But then if I think about it, mommy gave me my own voice.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I trust that voice then?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think parents do that, yes, out of love, but also a lot of times out of anxiety and
Yeah, fear.
not, yeah, fear of how's this going to go? How's this going to turn out? And I better be in there. I better be the one. And we do
Yeah.
that with ourselves too. We're so afraid of the future. We're so afraid of the unknown that we're, constantly grappling at this next thing that we lose that sense of, kind of centered presence that you're talking about, knowing my values, knowing my desires,
Mhm.
my self-expression, my mission, my purpose.
Yes.
Here.
So then what happens is we're like, oh, well, what's the next new in thing? Oh, meditation.
Oh, yeah, right. Better go do
Right.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yoga. Yeah, get my yoga bag, get my tights or whatever.
Right. Exactly
Was
right.
cycling. Oh, I'm all cycling,
Yeah,
So,
right.
so we think conscious living is the way we look, right? Even the way we act. And
Where we shop. Do I shop at Lululemon? Am
yeah,
I at Whole Foods? Am I at
exactly.
Patagonia? Like even where we shop, conscious living has become a brand. And that's
Yes,
what I want to
exactly.
separate. The conscious living isn't about what's outside of you. And just exactly as you said, it's about who you are and coming back to that sense of center.
Yes. And because I am a unifier, I have to look at this conscious living trend as a seed. You might have heard me speak about this before, but I look at that. So and as a hypnotherapist, sometimes what is conscious living is really conscious brain living,
Mm.
right? Not conscious awareness, right? But conscious brain living. So the person who is, going with the trend, now I'm meditating, now I'm doing yoga, now I'm shopping at Whole Foods, that is conscious brain living. And what is happening is that seed has been planted in their conscious brain. Now, over time, that seed can be watered by people like you and I, the great unifiers, because we do want them into this conscious living. We don't want it to just be a behavior that an act or behavior that they are
Right.
doing. Right. And so we're going to water that seed so then it can like go down further, even deeper and germinate. And then those are probably the people who are more so like taking the courses and they're curious. That those are what I call the people who are being watered. They're more curious. They're like, it's got to be deeper than me just carrying a yoga mat around. I got to figure this out. And they're really searching and seeking. And then they are the teachers, the people who are just were born conscious. We don't even know why they were. And those people help. They're just harvesting from day one. You and I, people who've been doing this work for so long, we barely came to this earth harvesting those seeds that were planted. My seed, your seed were planted really young. And so we were able, by the time we were adults, to harvest and teach this to other people. But I look at it like that. The people who are external, it's because the seed just got dropped for them,
Oh,
right? The people who
okay.
are seeking, those seeds are being watered. And then the harvesters and the teachers like us, we just came with the seed already planted inside of us.
Oh, great. Really good teaching, Kine. I love it. So you're defining conscious living as coming back to yourself, being yourself, expressing your voice, knowing your voice, aligning your life with your voice.
Yep.
So given that, do you have times where you go unconscious? I know I do, where I'm just,
Yeah.
yeah. So do you have times that you just feel like you're not yourself? I sometimes say to my spouse, I miss myself. And that's a good clue to me that I've gone unconscious for an hour or a day or a week or whatever. Like I'm just off. So do you have experiences of going unconscious? And if your answer to that is yeah, sure, I have my moments. What do you do to bring yourself back into the presence of yourself and who you are?
So I have this saying that people know about me, and that is I'm only going to be unhappy. I'm not going to be unhappy for more than a few minutes. Like it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to be unhappy for more than a few minutes. So I say that to say that is about how long I am outside of my consciousness.
Yeah. Okay.
And it partly is because I came to this world as a teacher. This is my work from day one. I've always been this conscious person living in consciousness, teaching that. So when I go outside of it, it is not for very long. And when I see myself do it, it's most of the time when I'm outside of unifying. So what I mean by that is when I am separating. That's when I know if I two ways I know if I'm separating or if I'm stingy, right? My core value is generosity. Give, unify and give. Right. And I do that through love. If I make a decision that is below love, then I'm not conscious in that moment. And so if that ever happens, I'm catching myself and I'm like, whoa, why did I not give that to Jackie? Like I'm generous. I should be able to say yes at all times. So if I ever am saying not no, I don't, especially my women listening to this, I do not mean you say yes to everybody. So please understand that.
Right. No can be a complete sentence.
Exactly. So I do want you to understand that what I'm saying is that we are all one, like you said earlier. So if I am trying to hold back a piece, that makes no sense because we're all one. So all pieces are mine and yours. So if I'm trying to gather and hold and keep, then I know that I'm outside of consciousness. So that's how I know, but I know that very quickly. And the reason why I know is because I get a feeling. And this is why I want you to go back to yourself. So if you first get in touch with love, I call the unification is love. Love is the unifier. So if you go to love first, right? If you get in touch with love and then you uncover the program, that's what I mentioned when I said for women it's chipped away, for men is pulling off the layers. Get in touch with that program. And I call that uncovering. Once you uncover the program and then you discover yourself, it's so easy to know when you're outside of consciousness because you'll get a little bit of a feeling. And I don't let the feeling get too big. If it gets too big, of course, the only people who can do that is family members, right? The people who are close to you can really push your buttons and rile you up the most. So if you ever feel that coming on or getting to that, it's like, I'm going back to basics. I'm going back to love. How do I get back to love? Okay, now what was the program? What was the story? Okay, let me uncover that story. Now let me discover what do we have, me and this person? What do we have? Oh, and then now I get to be myself as I discover that relationship. How can I discover this relationship best? When I'm being myself. How can I discover this relationship best? When I'm allowing Jackie to be herself. Otherwise, we don't have a relationship.
It's inauthentic from start to
finish. It's a play. Right?
Great. You said so much there. I want to try to pull some of this out and really synthesize it. So one of the things you said is know your values. You said one of my core values is love. One is generosity. So the first thing, one of the things that you said in that just brilliant piece of teaching is to know what you value. Part of knowing yourself is knowing what am I here? What's my foundation for living? What's my foundation for living? And that's, your core values. Your standards of how you're going to conduct yourself is so important. And then the second thing you said, if I notice myself withholding. So what you're saying is another piece of conscious living is you've got to freaking wake up and pay attention. You have to have awareness of what you're feeling, what you're thinking. And then you said, if I find myself holding back, I have to ask myself what's going on so I can then give. So you're saying, know your values, pay attention to with awareness, and then align your behavior with what you value. And sometimes that's where it gets a little sticky. It's like, well, I don't want to be generous because she's a jerk. And I don't want to be in relationship with somebody who's a jerk. Or I don't want to, like the ego gets all flared up and gets all righteous about, why I should do this. And it feels like it gets muddy and you're just making it boom. So simple.
Yeah. Exactly, because it goes back to what you said about the lady in the concentration camp. It's like, am I bringing more hate to this world, right? Or am I bringing love? And that really is what it goes back to. And if you can say to yourself always and at all times, I'm going to treat this person like I treat God. And I mean that God, however you see God, right? I treat this person like I treat God because, like you said, we are all God's seedlings, right? We're all little seeds of God. And so if a piece of God lives inside Jackie and Jackie is a piece of God, then if I don't treat Jackie well, I'm not treating God well.
Yeah, exactly. Treat every person as if they're the most important person on the planet right here, right now.
Yeah. And so some people are going to say, well, I don't even believe in God. will you believe in something,
Oh,
right? If
right.
it's just the ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? That earth, that all of that is oneness. And because we are one, if I don't treat Jackie well, I don't treat me well. And you can feel it when you don't treat somebody well.
Yeah.
You can feel it. So you can go through life feeling that feeling if you want to, or you can choose consciously to feel good. Remember, I said, I am not going to be unhappy for more than a few minutes. That's about me. So I'm treating you good so that I can feel better.
You can feel better. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
actually science to back that up. Yeah, when people are given money and can like $25 or something, you can choose to spend it on yourself or give it to someone else. The people who give away the money report after the event like higher levels of happiness than people who kept the money to themselves. So there's actual science to back that up.
Yeah.
That
So when you put yourself, and what people, I want to make a distinction too, because one of the programs that I work with is not so much men, but mostly women on, but is better to give than to receive. Because when people hear that statement you just said, that's what they're going to hear, but that is not what you said. What you said is you continue the, like, what was that, whatever that was, the energy that was happening,
yeah,
they continued the energy. That's really what that study is about.
yeah.
They kept the flow of that energy going. It
Mhm.
wasn't about giving and receiving, because they had already received.
It
And
already-
so we can't forget the part of them receiving, right? So there is equal value in giving and receiving. They had already received, and what they did was they kept the flow going rather than stopping the flow. So I want to really be clear that people understood that, because I know that there are a lot of people that are programmed to believe that it's better to give than to receive. And so I wanted to really just clear that up.
It's the
And
energy flow.
yeah, keeping that flow, because that flow is what keeps that's the, again, the unifier, the love, that flow. If we can keep that flow going, the more, just imagine when you stand next to somebody who's upset, you can feel it.
Mm.
Right? You're like, oh,
The
they don't
vibe
even
is right there.
exactly. You can walk in a room and you're like two people could be arguing. You can walk in a room, they shut up, but you know an argument just happened. You don't
Right.
even have to hear anything. You can feel it. You're like, oh, I should probably leave back out.
Something's going on here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it
Right?
is. It's all energy. We are living in a vibratory universe, a vibrational
Yeah,
universe. Yeah, which is the
exactly.
other word that I use for consciousness. I say it's your vibe. So
Mm,
as we deepen this conversation, it's one of my other pet peeves is that there's so many quote unquote consciousness teachers out there, but no one definition of consciousness.
right.
So how do you? Yeah, you know, it's hard to really gain mastery in a field when even those of us that are teaching it, and I don't think it's a problem. I think it's part of the evolution of where we're going as humanity.
Absolutely.
But how do you understand that word consciousness?
Mm, really, I don't have to go as far as to say that I do not.
Yeah,
Right. I
yeah,
Yeah, and that's my journey right now, is the unfolding and the discovery of consciousness. And normally most things I do want to understand, but the more that I have gone through life trying to understand, the more I have decided that I just want to be curious. And
that's
and
beautiful.
and it's just so much more fun to be curious than it is to understand. And the reason is because of the evolution, right? If you think about, we evolved as physical beings, then what consciousness is or was even 20 years ago is different than it is right now, because we evolved as human beings physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So I want to evolve with whatever it is becoming. And I think it goes back to the seeds, the planting, the watering, on the harvesting.
Yeah.
And even though I feel like I'm in the harvester mode, like I'm harvesting that consciousness, what I understand so far about consciousness is that for me, when I get to be myself and I allow you to be yourself, we are most conscious in this moment.
Mhm.
And then if we allow it to evolve, then we're still continuing the consciousness. And then as a hypnotherapist, like I talked about earlier, I know that consciousness for most people means they are doing their program, right? So I have to make that distinction. When I talk about conscious, I'm usually talking about programming. But
Mm.
when you are talking about conscious, you are talking about that, um, I guess I'm going to say esoteric, like side of the world that is hard to put into words because the spirit is leading that, the soul is leading that. So there's conscious brain, which is different
Right.
from consciousness,
Right. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a use
And
your mind to train your brain, and the mind
ex-
and the brain are not the same thing.
And then it is about allowing. And that is really, if I have to put any kind of definition to conscious living, it is just allowing your life to happen by being your true, authentic self.
Conscious living is allowing your life to unfold according to your true, authentic self.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. We do
And
get
that
it.
true, authentic self, as it be curious to see what that
It
true,
keeps
authentic self.
unfolding. That
Mhm.
keeps unfolding, and that is conscious living.
Yes.
Allow yourself to continue to unfold according to
Yep.
as your values grow and as your consciousness grows, as you expand in your beliefs.
Yeah, because we get lost in the titles and stuff. You know, people say, "Oh, I'm keto and I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan and I'm
Right.
whatever they are," right? And
Right.
then then they have to fake it because they're like, "Well, don't let anybody see me eating these chips because this is not keto," right? It's like,
It's so true. It's so true. You know, this is so great. You have so much to say, so much to teach. I know people are going to want to be getting in touch with you. So I'm going to just let you tell people that. And then I'm going to ask you one last question for us to dive in on. So for those people that want to follow you or maybe work with you, how do people find you?
so to follow me and just kind of hang out with me, the two places that I usually send people is Instagram to have a little bit of fun. That's why I have a little bit of fun on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah.
And then a little bit more professional side is on LinkedIn. So those are the two places where you can just hang out with me and
Right.
get like free content that I give out. And
Excellent.
then if you say, I want to know more, I want to see if we could work together and you can help me get to that my true authentic self, then you would go to our website, presidentiallifestyle.com. And there you'll find two options. One to just kind of take our assessment and see what is the imposter in you, you know, who that imposter is, what is creating that imposter in you. Sometimes it's your work, sometimes it's your, you know, your love life, your relationship that is creating that imposter in you. But if you take our assessment, you'll start to unfold. We ask you the right questions so you can get the answers you're looking for.
Nice. You have a beautiful website, by the way. So much content and information on your website. I really love it. So to dive in now, we'll go a little bit deeper and then we'll wrap up. I love asking everyone this question. What is your hope for humanity when it comes to conscious living and awakening and looking at the time that we're in? What's your hope for humanity?
Well, that would just allow me to kind of sum up what we've been talking about so far. And that is number one, live from unity, right? That love. If you start your life with love as your neutral, love is your neutral at all time. You don't have to raise to love. You don't have to decide to love. It's just your neutral. You just wake up in the morning in love. Right. That is what I want for everyone. And I know that if you start your day in love, then that will allow you to get to your true authentic self. So by doing that love, being your neutral, then what happens then is you are more curious. So you release some of that program because the program is rigid. If it's better to give than to receive, then we can't argue that. That's the program. I just got to do what they say. It's better for me to just give. Never say no. Give. No. It's just different sides of the same coin. But if
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what it feels like to receive, and I'm curious to see what it feels like to give, curious, I like both of those. Yeah.
Yeah. I-
So for humanity, I want you to wake up in love.
yeah.
I want you to then be curious, release that program, because the more curious you are, the more you're going to let go of those programs,
Yeah.
and then just discover. So as you're being curious, you'll start to discover. You don't have to put any titles, any labels, any of that on it. As you discover, just allow it to be. And then from there, in that discovery, enjoy it.
Yes.
That's what I want. And so if you,
That's what you want. Yeah. That's what you want.
sure is.
Everybody have fun. Start
Yes.
with love and end with joy.
Yes.
Not so bad. I love that notion of waking up in neutral. You're having love be your neutral and waking up in love as your neutral. You probably know this. Most consciousness teachers don't teach that. They teach that neutral is the place between kind of love
Yep.
and fear,
Yep.
and how you're experiencing life. So you're saying have love be your neutral, a new starting point.
Yeah.
A lot of times I tell my clients that, like, look, the first place for you to get with this anger, this resignation, just get to neutral, where it doesn't make your stomach turn, where you're not like going into anger the second you think of what happened, or, just get to neutral. And you're raising the bar. You're saying, yeah, no, neutral is just to wake up in love. I love that, Kine. That is a beautiful message to leave people with today on the Conscious Living Summit. So thank you for your time, your partnership, your friendship. It is just delightful to be able to spend this time with you.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me, allowing me to share.
So great.